Good evening, everybody. Thank you for joining us. Tonight, we have Mr. Jared. And the title of his talk is Relics and Tales of Moulton Ranch, which is an Orange County area for those people who are not on Zoom that are not local. He is the great-grandson of Lewis and Nellie Gail Moulton. Jared Mathis has deep roots in Orange County. He's the CEO of the Moulton Company, a private equity real estate group. He is also president of the Moulton Museum, which is located in Laguna Hills. The museum opened its doors in September 2022 and actively archives, restores, and preserves Orange County historical artifacts from farm implements and buggies to documents, artwork, and images of the period. The archive contains family photos, maps, furniture, ephemera, personal papers, and corporate history. Mr. Mathis is active in many other community activities and is board co-chair of the Laguna Playhouse, serves as a trustee for Laguna College of Art and Design, and is a member of the Chapman University's Board of Governors. Jared is also a life member of the Saddleback Area Historical Society and a board member of the 4M Water District.
I just need to share.
And again, the title of his talk tonight is Relics and Tales of Moulton Ranch. And I shall give this meeting over to this. Thank you for coming.
It's my pleasure to be here. And sorry for the delay. We were trying to get some audio issues worked out, but I hope you all can hear me loud and clear. I love talking history. I love talking about Orange County, and it's a pleasure to be here with all of you tonight. And we hope to make it interesting. And I'm sure there's a function here where people can raise their hands, even those on Zoom. If you have a question, let's try to make it as interactive as possible. But we'll get into the presentation here. Can everybody see my beautiful face there on the opening slide at the museum?
Yes.
Okay, good. All right. So as it was said by Joe, I am president of Moulton Museum, among other things. We've been open a year and a half or so, and it's been quite a journey. And I'm here to share a little bit about that, but really about the history and some of the artifacts and relics of Old Orange County that still remain that might be of interest to you that are local, and hopefully to those that aren't. Yeah, there we go. So Moulton Museum, as I said, was founded about a year and a half ago, or it was actually opened about a year and a half ago. We've been working on it since 2016. Moulton Ranch is really the basis of the artifacts, and that stretched from what is known as Irvine today to San Juan Capistrano, which is a pretty long stretch on its widest point. And we'll see a map here in a little bit that details it. But it was 22,000 acres, and it was acquired in 1895 by my great-grandfather, Lewis, with the help of his family. In making that happen. The picture there is the family that remains today, and they all fully support the museum and sharing all the artifacts with the greater community, with the idea that it brings the community together. One thing that we really believe in is history and people learning about it. And, we all share the same land now that used to be my grandparents' backyard, but that binds us. And we hope that our effort in this way benefits the community around us. Our business was based in agriculture. Through the museum, we not only do the agriculture and the history, but also the culture as well, bringing and telling stories, as well as appreciating art and some of the other cultural organizations that we've helped build throughout Orange County. So we work with nonprofits and we work with other agencies to help deliver the message, and it's been quite a journey so far. So as I said, Moulton Ranch was 22,000 acres. That map that you see there, I know it would be hard to make out all the detail on your computers, but that was hand drawn by my grandmother based on how she remembered that area. That is consisting of a number of cities today: Aliso Viejo, Laguna Hills, Laguna Niguel, Laguna Woods, parts of Laguna Beach, and Dana Point, and parts of Dana Point. As I said before, the ranch was purchased in 1895, but Lewis himself arrived in 1874. He then married his wife, my great-grandmother, Nellie Gail Moulton, in 1908. And then there's a wonderful story after Lewis passed away. That whole place, that map that you see there, was all run by women for a good chunk of time. And we're building an exhibition, our next exhibition, that you'll learn a little bit more about, called Women on the Ranch, all about that powerful story of strong women that bridged the gap between the heart of the ranching period and the development period in Orange County. The ranch started to transition in the 1960s. For those that aren't familiar with that piece of dirt, if you look at the upper left-hand corner of that map, that's Laguna Canyon Road. And in the 60s, in Laguna Canyon Road, there was a gentleman by the name of Timothy Leary that liked to have a lot of parties and fly planes over the canyon and drop LSD down. That doesn't usually mix very well with ranching and ranchers. That leads to a lot of sleepless nights. So as development encroached upon the footprint of that ranch in the 60s, the ranch started to sell off in pieces. And as those things sold off, then and after Lewis died, Nellie Gail was very involved in the community to build some cultural institutions. But as I said, nearly 22,000 acres. It was inhabited by camps and tenant farmers, folks that had their piece of the 22,000 acres and got to farm and live. That farmhouse that you're looking at there was the home of Lewis and Nellie Gail Moulton. It is at the location where the Laguna Hills Mall is now, or at least it was. It's kind of a big open piece of dirt right now. Also, those white homes next to it were the homes of their one-third business partner, Jean-Pierre de Guerre, a French Basque sheep herder, also part of the family. If you hear the name de Guerre, and if it sounds familiar, it's probably because you're thinking of daguerreotype photography and photos. That was his lineage. He came over, probably took him about 6 months to get from where he came from to Orange County, and started with Lewis as a sheep herder, and then ultimately ended up being one-third partner in the ranch. In the picture there, you see Lewis Moulton on the bottom right-hand corner, his two daughters in the middle, and Nellie Gail, not one of her finer pictures, but Nellie Gail standing there with her two daughters. She was really a striking woman. That was a bad moment in time for her. So how did it all begin? We've kind of traced back the influences of Lewis Moulton. Why at age 18, 19 would he come from Boston, where he was at the time, and hop on a steamer ship and end up crossing over the Isthmus of Panama and come to Orange County at that young age? Well, it all began in the early days of our country, and we'll go over that, covering Moulton's Hill, our connection to Abe Lincoln and other presidents of the United States, and there's some pretty fun stories there. So, Moulton's Hill. These are the stories that Lewis grew up hearing. Brigadier General Jonathan Moulton. You've heard of Bunker Hill, and you've likely heard of Breed's Hill. Those are two of the more prominent of the three hills in Charleston. But Moulton's Hill, there you see it on the right, that's where the British landed on the Battle of Bunker Hill. And President George Washington, well, before he was president, as general, gave him the Grand Union flag after the Battle of Bunker Hill, for the bravery shown on the battlefield there. And as I said, other stories that Lewis grew up with were the family relations to Presidents John Adams, John Quincy Adams, and Calvin Coolidge. So did anybody know that there was Moulton's Hill in Charlestown next to Bunker Hill? Yeah, probably not. But
Just there this last summer.
okay. Yeah, it's all residential housing now. But yeah, so that's the influences that Lewis had growing up, at least partially, that we know of.
The animation.
We're trying to move the slide here. Maybe just, there we go. Okay, perfect. Also, there's a fascinating connection to Abraham Lincoln, and Lewis's father, Jotham Moulton, was pretty prominent attorney in Illinois, and he was friends with another attorney from Illinois, a guy by the name of Abe, and Abe would come over to the house. This was before he was president, and so Lewis remembered those stories and remembered talking to Abe. This was, again, before his political career. And if you go into the Lincoln papers, there's a story about Jotham and their relationship. And following Lincoln's assassination, for whatever reason, Lewis's parents split up, which wasn't particularly common in those days. And he moved to Boston with his mother, Charlotte Fenno Moulton. Now, the Fennos were pretty well established in Boston, and so he actually could do any number of different things, whether it be in wool or publishing, but that wasn't for him. He was more of a man of action, and so that staying put in Boston wasn't for him. Now, we've got a video here, and you're probably not going to hear the audio because we've just been messing around trying to get it. But thankfully, there's closed caption, and this tells the story of Lewis and his journey. And if you want to hear the audio, it's on our YouTube channel, and you can hear it there. But let's hope and pray maybe the audio will come to us. But we've got to share the.
By some means of putting off your purchase of this ranch.
There we go. And then
To buy a property like the Niguel Ranch when there's so little likelihood of your.
okay, this is a video. It's about 9 minutes long. It's all about.
My dear cousin, the firm cannot advance over 5 cents a pound against your wool until there is more chance of finding a customer for it. I still hope that you will devise some means of putting off your purchase of this ranch. But believe me, you are making a grand and grave mistake.
His cousin,
Even your friend Rawson, no matter how much you may
from
feel
Boston,
for him,
did not want
would
him to
hardly
buy the
expect you to
ranch.
buy a property like the Niguel Ranch when there's
Cyrus
so little
Rawson
likelihood of
was
your
out
being
of,
able to make it pay.
Laguna Beach. He owned the property.
When Lewis Moulton was 10 years old,
Didn't want him
his
to buy it.
parents
Said it
separated,
would be a grand
and Lewis
grave
went with
mistake.
his mother to Boston to be near to her family, the Fennos. Boston had a population of 350,000, nearly half that
As I
of the
said, he
entire
moved
state
into
of California.
Boston with his
Its major
mother,
industries were dry goods, nautical supplies,
worked on Daniel
metalworking,
Webster's
and
farm.
publishing. The Fennos were well established in the
was
city on the hill as
making
bankers, wool brokers,
wages
and
of
publishers of the
manual
Weekly
labor.
Wool Report, the Financial
Meanwhile, the
Times
family
of Textiles.
had the
Lewis's
wool
first
report.
job was at a farm called
Green
Green Harbor.
was Daniel
Subsequently,
Webster's
he ran
farm.
errands for a storekeeper, earning $1.50 a day,
Earning
about
$1.50
average for
a
unskilled
day.
labor.
And it just
His
wasn't
future here
enough
looked bright.
for him.
But for Lewis, neither a desk job nor a sure thing ever held much appeal. At the age of 20, he boarded a steamer
So
headed
19,
west.
he
The
decided
5-week trip through the
by age
Isthmus of
20, he was
Panama
on a
landed
ship
him
on
at
his way
Wilmington Harbor, from whence he
back to
took a stage
California.
to Santa Ana, arriving at midnight. The next day,
And
Lewis
the
found
day
work
after he
shepherding on
arrived,
Rancho
he
San
went to
Joaquin,
work for Mr.
today
Irvine.
known as the
We're
Irvine
here
Ranch.
at the Irvine Ranch Water District. He went to work for Mr. Irvine, and and
Southern
worked as a sheep
California
herder
was
for
a
almost
wild and wide
20
open
years.
place. Crossing Rancho San Joaquin by
Before he
horse
could
took half a
actually
day.
muster up,
Grizzly
the
bears
ability to
wandered
do what he
free.
wanted to do.
Over time, Lewis bought a
California
flock
was a
of
different
sheep
time then.
and eventually secured the lease on Niguel
and,
Ranch from
he
its hard
started
luck
to
owner, Cyrus Rawson,
lease what
one
was
of his close
Rancho
friends.
Niguel before
Lewis was confident he could
bought
make
it.
money in wool because of his family connections back in
because the
Boston.
family was in wool
All he
back
needed
in
was an
Boston.
opportunity.
He
Friends
had a
called
pretty good
Cyrus
idea that he
Rawson,
could make
owner
it
of
work,
Niguel Ranch, the kindest
because they
man
could
who
store
ever
wool.
lived. But he wasn't the shrewdest businessman. Struck with
Rawson
a
from
combination
Laguna
of
Beach
bad
wasn't
luck,
a really shrewd
bad timing,
businessman.
and feckless speculation, he stayed afloat by borrowing money
And he
from
got
just
over
about
his skis.
anyone, including the Fenos.
So
As Rawson drowned in interest payments,
as he,
the nation's second-longest
drowned in
recession
interest
hammered
payments,
the economy. With no options
Lewis,
left, Rawson put
wrote to
Niguel
his
Ranch up
family
for sale.
about the
Lewis
deal.
offered to buy it for
And offered to buy it for
$125,000, a steep
$125,000.
price for grazing land in the middle of nowhere.
Now this is in
Lewis would have to
1895.
borrow the money from the Fenos to make it work. There was only one problem. Lawrence Fenno disapproved
But the
of
family
purchase.
back home in Boston
I am so
disapproved
much of the opinion that you are doing a rash thing. If you take my advice,
He
you
said,
will
"If
put
you
the
take
matter
my
right before
advice,
Mr.
you will put the
Rawson
matter right
and
before
explain
Mr.
to him that
Rawson,
you do
explain
not
to
see
him
how it would be
that you do
possible to
not see how it
consummate
would
the
be
deal for the
possible to
ranch on a
consummate the
basis
deal
of
for the ranch
$125,000. Nor do I feel you are
$125,000.
willing to admit the gravity of the situation, which the present
He didn't
outlook
think he was
presents.
taking it seriously
We are
enough.
just at the beginning of the failures, which will be the natural outcome of the inflation which has been going on for the past 10 years. It will be more than a shame if you put your head in the noose when you've been advised beforehand of the
And he
results.
said it would be more than a
Lewis
shame
may
if
have
you
been
put your head in
motivated
the
by
noose
friendship as much as
after
anything.
being warned.
He signed the deal without Lawrence Fenno's backing and presented
But
his
he
cousin
pulled
with
a
a
fast one
done
a little
deal.
bit. Lewis did. He signed
You
the
did
deal
tell me when I was in
without
Los
his
Angeles that you
family's
had
backing.
come to
I'm
some
sorry to
understanding
interrupt,
with Mr.
but
Rawson.
there
But
is
you
sound
certainly
coming
never
through,
did
so
tell
we
me
can hardly hear
outright
you.
that you had closed the trade with him.
Oh, good.
If it was
Well, then,
anybody
hey,
but you,
perfect.
oh, how quickly I would say, wind up the business, pay me out, and take your own course. But blood is stronger than water, and I am certainly in a quandary as to how I should act. Now you say, and say rightly, that I should want no kinsman of mine to break his word. And if you've definitely agreed with Mr. Rawson to this transaction, I cannot say any more.
Without getting their permission, Lewis had just agreed to borrow money from the Fenos so that Cyrus Rawson could pay off the Fenos and other creditors with that same money. Just after Lewis inked the deal, the rain stopped falling. Drought. The price of wool dropped by half. The grass was short, the creeks dry. One by one, and then by the hundreds, lambs began to die. Lewis took a desperate gamble, divide his sheep into 4 bands, and drive them into the Sierra Nevada mountains. Their path ran through one of the most brutal places on Earth, the Mojave Desert. Sand, rattlesnakes, and blistering heat for weeks on end. 12,000 sheep on the move. Lewis hired the French Basque Jean-Pierre Daguerre to oversee one of the bands. They drove the animals a few miles each day and drew them close to the wagon at night.
Very dear companion, I would like to let you know that the desert is very dry. There isn't anything. On the way here, we had a lot of work and a lot of misery as far as water and meadow. The animals are quite hurt. I have lost some.
Everyone was searching for feed. Tens of thousands of sheep had made the mountains ahead of them, and more desperate shepherds appeared every day. Cyrus Rawson, former owner of Niguel Ranch and Lewis's dear friend, had agreed to help. Awaiting in the town of Bishop, Rawson wrote,
4 bands in such a season is awful to contemplate. It has been as dry as powder here this winter, and no spring rains at all, so the brush cannot grow much, and that is the mainstay in the mountains. Everything is piling upon us at once. Distressful times and distressful seasons. One might wrestle with either one alone, but the two together almost break one down. And yet, there is no use in whimpering. We will give our troubles the most manful battle we can.
The drought had no equal for 125 years. Lewis missed an interest payment. He tried to sell all his animals, but no one was buying. One prospect returned half the animals because they were too malnourished. After having warned Lewis over and over not to purchase Niguel Ranch, Lawrence again proved his unfailing loyalty. Rather than selling the wool at rock-bottom prices, he stored it in Boston warehouses and loaned Lewis money against future income.
I should not as yet give up all hope of the sheep business. If a good many of the itinerant Frenchmen are run out of the business in your neighborhood by the low prices of wool, it may be just so much better for you.
A long-term perspective is well and good, but a business without money is like a chuck wagon without food. At Lawrence's urging, Lewis took on a partner. He sold a third interest in the ranch to his foreman Jean-Pierre Daguerre. Jean-Pierre had come to California the same year as Lewis, in 1874. While Lewis's travel took 5 weeks, the trip from France likely took 6 months. Once here, Jean-Pierre did what his French Basque ancestors had done for centuries, shepherding. The partnership was a natural. Lawrence Fenno's prediction came true. When enough shepherds went out of business, the price of wool stabilized, then rose. They managed to sell the old inventory at acceptable prices. With Jean-Pierre as a partner, Niguel Ranch could weather the next crisis with confidence. In fact, within a year, they purchased several thousand more acres. The ranch continued expanding until the Moulton Fenno cousins could look back upon the years with a wisdom born of hardship.
My dear cousin, from my own personal experience, I have long since discovered that the best way to get a good, substantial property is first of all to have a legitimate business. Know it thoroughly and work it for all it is worth, as I did in the wool business and as you have done on your ranch. In times of panic, the people who blow loud horns and skate on thin ice generally come to grief. Take my advice, old man, and invest your surplus income from the ranch in the best things going. They pay a little less, but they pay it regularly. And if I can help you in making your selections, do not fail to call upon me.
Lewis married a schoolteacher, Miss Nellie Gail, and they had 2 daughters. 30 years later, Lewis passed away, at which time the women took over. But that is another story.
We'll go back to the presentation. Yeah, should be. All right, did everybody get a chance to hear that?
Yep, it came through loud and clear. Thank you.
Great, excellent. So we're getting our screen back here. There we go. Yeah, yep, next one. There we go. So what's $125,000 in 1874 worth today? Well, it's worth about $4.4 million. Not a bad purchase even today for 22,000 acres for $4.5 million. So by any standard, that was a great deal. And there's certainly some themes or lessons in all of that. Does anybody want to offer up their thoughts? No takers? Okay. Well, hey, don't get over leveraged for sure. Buy real estate in places you understand, and work with only the best people and take advantage of your opportunities. That's certainly what Lewis did, and you got to be a little bit lucky too.
Buy and hold.
Right, exactly. Now, at the end of that period, after he took Jean-Pierre Daguerre on as a partner, Nellie Gail arrived on the scene. Now, actually, Lewis had been married before, but had no kids and had a wife that he couldn't keep around. They'd have parties and she'd stay out too late and after he went home. So anyway, Nellie Gail came on the scene. The El Toro General Store, like a lot of towns in that day, El Toro General Store was where everything happened. You can see in that picture in the bottom right, that's where the train tracks came through. You got your mail there, you got all your general supplies there. And Nellie Gail's father ran that El Toro store. I think basically kind of on Muirlands, for those that know the area. But But in any case, he had done that in other places in the country, but this is where they settled. Nellie Gail was a pretty fascinating lady at age 6 months in her small town, our hometown in Kansas. 2 big tornadoes came through, ripped up the whole town, picked her up and threw her across the house, destroyed the town. There's a whole website dedicated to the fact that those 2 tornadoes were the ones that inspired the opening scene in another Kansas town, in a little thing called The Wizard of Oz. And for those that know that movie, the lead character is Dorothy. And anybody know what her last name is? Gail, Dorothy Gail. So there's a lot of conspiracy theories out there that there's a tie there. So it's kind of fun, even if it is legend, but it's kind of fun to talk about. And then to give you an idea of Nellie Gail's sense of humor, she wrote about all the trips that she made in her life, and she traveled the entire globe a few times and took probably a dozen flights in her life. She referred to that tornado as her first flight, which I think is telling of her personality. She, as a young teenager, traveled by covered wagon to the West. She ended up being a teacher and administrator in a one-room schoolhouse, helped out at the El Toro General Store, and that's where she met Lewis during one of those summers in between being a teacher. She married Lewis in 1908, and after Lewis died, she was very involved in the community and places that the locals might recognize: Laguna College of Art and Design, Laguna Playhouse, Laguna Art Museum. Those places wouldn't be around if it wasn't for Nellie Gail. She also brought Festival of the Opera to Laguna Beach. Her and Joan Irvine brought that, and it was there for a number of years. South Shores Church, what became Hoag Hospital, and there's a whole building named after Nellie Gail there at Chapman College. She donated a big chunk of what is Laguna Hills now to Chapman College at the time, and they held onto it for a while and sold it and became Chapman University not long after that. So the giving back to the community is certainly something that we've been taught through example. Charlotte and Louise were the daughters of Lewis and Nellie Gail. Again, for the locals that might know the street name Avenida de Carlota there off El Toro Road, that is for Charlotte. And Calle de Luisa, that is for her sister Louise. Charlotte's the one with the big bow. I don't even know if you can call that a bow. That's enormous, but that's Charlotte, and Louise to her right with Nellie Gail, their mom. Charlotte was my grandmother, and also a very soft touch, always singing in the kitchen. She had one husband, and she had three children, one of which was my father. Louise, on the other hand, she literally rode 2 horses at a time, 1 foot on one on the other, to school. She was in the corral and was better with the rope than most cowboys you'll find. And she burned through 3 husbands and had no children. And Louise was a character in that she was the last one to leave Moulton Ranch. When a 22,000 acre ranch starts to sell off, all the fun stuff, all the artifacts, everything, they start being shifted around from one place to another. And Louise is the one that ended up with all of it. And because she had no children and she outlived all of her husbands, those are the artifacts that populate the museum. So we're very, very grateful to her. She lived to the age of 99. All 3 of those women lived well into their 90s. And Louise made it to 2014, which is when we started putting together the idea of actually doing what we're doing now. Eventually, in the early 70s, the ranch was divided. Ultimately, the final remaining acres were, and we have a map. Actually, there's one for the folks in person here. You can see where it was divided for Nellie Gail and Charlotte and Louise. And it's pretty fascinating how all that went down. And for folks that enjoy history and geography and artifacts, understanding the cities that are now within the old ranch footprint, and we have heritage celebrations with these groups. Laguna Niguel, the ground that Laguna Niguel has, was purchased from Moulton Ranch in 1959. That was really one of the first things to go. Laguna Woods, which is now, or which at the time was called Leisure World, which was one of the first senior developments ever built, was first acquired in 1963. Laguna Hills in the 60s, and Aliso Viejo was the last piece, and that was Louise's piece, and that was in 1976. So you can see the other dates there. So sequentially, it's sold off. I mentioned Leisure World. There was a big globe. Anybody remember the big globe? Yeah. It's pretty amazing how quickly construction happened back in those days. The sale was made between Nellie Gail and Ross Cortese, and he purchased 3,500 acres of the 22,000 acres. And by the end of 63, they were already through a building with the initial phase, and 530 units were made available for move-in. I can't get anything built in that with that kind of speed in these days, but yeah, the first 10 homeowners moved in 1964. But that globe ended up being tossed, which is just a crying shame. When it switched from Leisure World to the city of Laguna Woods, nobody wanted it. And I wish I was around at that time, because I would have said, me, please, I'll take it. I don't care what we have to do. But they had one here and also in Seal Beach. Yeah.
It's still there.
The globe is, yeah.
2 weeks ago.
The first major architecturally significant building that was built on the former ranch was what is referred to as the Taj Mahal. I'm sure everybody's been there, locals. And that's where Cortese had his headquarters, Rossmore's headquarters. It housed them until 68, when there was an economic slowdown and they had to kind of liquidate some of their positions. It was designed by Burt Kober and Nicholas, and they had a number of Leisure World projects and also office buildings and shopping centers in LA and Orange County.
That's on El Toro Road.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, it looks like the Great Western Forum where the Lakers used to play, right? Same feel. Another significant architectural piece that was born from the ranch is what they call the ziggurat, or the Chet Holyfield Federal Building. It was designed by William Pereira. William Pereira is a famous architect. He designed a number of things that you would know: the Transamerica Building in San Francisco, the Space Age Building next to LAX that looks like it's out of the Jetsons, you know. Obviously the ziggurat, a whole host of things, but that brutalist style was definitely his signature. This land was purchased by North American Rockwell from our great aunt Louise, the one that was good in the corral and rode 2 horses. She sold that. It was originally white. The family used to call it the White Whale. And of course it was empty for the first 3-4 years. Rockwell, after building it, never occupied because the aerospace industry took a dive at that period of time. There were wars ending and that sort of thing. So the government that made it a federal building and did a trade with Rockwell and took it over in 1974. This is a fun picture of the ziggurat. This was when Moulton Ranch surrounded it, and there was nothing else around it. Can you see the ziggurat in the distance? And here's an interesting fact. We own every square inch around it. And we certainly had cameras and we could take pictures. There's not one picture that I've ever seen And if anybody has ever seen one, I'd love to see it. I've never seen a picture of that building being built. Not one, not at First American, nowhere. So if you have one, I'd love to see it, because we certainly don't have one. But that building is architecturally significant. The architect obviously is interesting, but it's over 1 million square feet of office. And these days, office buildings are not in high demand. And this one happens to be filled with asbestos and all sorts of fun things. So it needs to be taken down. There were a lot of historical covenants on this building, and that will end, and it will go back up for sale by the GSA in June of this year. And there's a long line of developers looking for the 92-acre property to be their project. This month, NAOP, which is an association representing shopping centers, is holding a competition between Chapman and UCI graduate real estate students who are going to re-envision the 92 acres. Other than the building, the only thing that's on that site is parking lot. It's where many folks from Orange County and beyond have learned how to drive. And maybe some of you on this Zoom as well. Another significant piece in the ranch that in Aliso Viejo, 8 acres was still remaining as not far back, as far as back as like 2013. That's when we started getting involved. There was nothing on the property other than the original buildings of the Moulton Ranch, which were the last remaining buildings. And we worked with the city to bring context and content to the site. If you haven't been there, I encourage you to go check it out. It's really beautiful. The bunkhouse is the building that you see in front of you. It's where all the different cultures came together. It was eventually used as a sales office by Mission Viejo Company after it was not in ranching anymore. But they kept the buildings, including the barn and the bunkhouse that you see there. And the city of Aliso Viejo, I'll give them all the credit in the world. They put up about $20 million to allow it to be preserved. And so we donated an old buggy and a lot of historical content, including Lewis's desk there. It's free admission, and they have all sorts of classes there. There's weddings there all the time now. It's right off the 73 in the heart of Aliso Viejo. Exactly. There's a lot of sports fields right across the street. So they went into the barn. That picture you see underneath the barn on the right-hand side, and then the diagram of the build out, they took what was just open horse barn and kept the original ceiling and made all the offices clear so that you can still feel like you're in the barn, the best way they could anyway. But there's a lot of farm machinery and other artifacts that are there on site. That's an old picture of the bunkhouse and the bunkhouse refurbished. We had an art show there working with Laguna College of Art and Design as well. But the great part about that bunkhouse is all the different cultures that came through. You see in that picture in the bottom left-hand corner, those names are names of folks that worked on the ranch. You'll see a number of folks there named Camarillo. The Camarillo family and the Moulton family go back many, many generations and are still family friends. The Forsters that had what is now Rancho Mission Viejo, there's a Forster in there, and they're still family friends. So all the old Orange County families that were really the pioneers of the area still, by and large, stay in contact. And because everybody helped everybody else, and there's a lot of trust in that area. And I don't know how you guys feel about it, but back then, even though they were separated by miles and miles, and they could only communicate with telegrams or letters or hopping on a horse and buggy to get to one another, they knew each other better than I think we know most of our neighbors now. And not judgment, it's just commentary. I think it's different. It's just different. Another significant piece of the ranch is a place called Soka University now. As Mission Viejo Company purchased the land that was Aliso Viejo, it took them a great effort to do what they did with that land. And they had to move more dirt than it took to build the Panama Canal in order to develop Aliso Viejo. And they were pretty exhausted by the time that they got to the area, which was at the mouth of Aliso and Wood Canyon. And they got a call from this school. It was primarily foreign backed, Japan. They had a campus in LA, and they asked if they could buy the remaining dirt that Mission Viejo was going to develop. And they were going to develop it as kind of a gated area, big bomber homes, because Aliso Viejo is pretty tight. Architecturally, the lots are, smaller. And this was going to be the luxury part of Aliso Viejo. But they paid Mission Viejo Company enough to where they said, we don't care if we move another ounce of dirt, it's yours. And it's a beautiful campus. Only has about 500 students, but the campus is world class. It's got per capita the biggest endowment of any university in the country, up against Harvard or anybody else you want to talk about. And in and around Soka is that Aliso Wood Canyon Park. There are corrals from Moulton Ranch still standing. If you go to Soka University and you go into the back parking lot and peek over, you can see them. That's the big picture in the left-hand corner of your screen. You can also hike to it. But if you're lazy or don't want to walk, which is the option I take a lot, you can see those corrals through the back parking lot. Otherwise, you can just follow the OC Park trails and you'll walk right by them. It's a very easy walk. It's long, but it's flat. Also at that visitor center at the OC Park, we've helped them find other artifacts and explain what's there. That bottom right-hand corner picture, we helped them uncover a sheep dip. So that used to be filled with what they would want the sheep to be covered in to keep bugs away and that sort of thing. So you'd have a big line of sheep, and that thing gradually goes down into the liquid that they had the sheep walk into. But the park folks had no idea what it was. And we dug up some pictures and we're like, we know what this is. That's a sheep dip. But old harvesters and all sorts of different things. Another group that we work with is Heritage Hill, and that's a wonderful park that's run by the county in Lake Forest. Let me stop there before we go further. Are there any questions thus far?
Did you meet your great-grandmother?
So Nellie, Gail, and I did cross over briefly. She died in 1972. I was born in 71. And there's a picture of her holding me in nothing but a diaper. And she has a pretty grumpy look on her face. So I don't know what I'd done, but yeah, we crossed over briefly. Yeah. So another big piece of the ranch and where the ranch headquarters were is what they call now the village at Laguna Hills. That picture in the right-hand corner up above is what they're trying to make of that space. Right now, it's nothing but a dirt pile and some old buildings that are remaining, but primarily it's about 60 acres of open dirt. Some of the best real estate left in Orange County, other than the ziggurat. And it's just wild that out of the 22,000 acres, now these two spaces, which were significant to the family, both from the headquarters perspective and the deal that Louise made with Rockwell, they're now the biggest real estate plays in Orange County, period. And we've got the history of all of them. And so maybe city leaders are going to say, hey, why don't we build a museum for these guys on one of these sites? But that's what we're maybe hoping for one of these days. But that project is far from being done. And that village at Laguna Hills has 16 acres off of Avenida de la Carlota, which we talked about earlier, that is all office. And it's about 16 acres of office, which will never be built. So that's got to be repositioned, redesigned, all of those things. And hopefully there'll be a nod to the history. We'll see. We had a wonderful experience with the airport, bringing up history and artifacts for people to see as they went through John Wayne Airport. We worked with our partners at Moulton Niguel Water District, a district like Irvine Water District that we helped form as a family way back in the day. And we had a big display in Orange County Airport from March to September in 2023. And it was a great success. And bringing that pioneer spirit to the foreground. We mentioned William Pereira before. One of the things that the folks here in person have the opportunity to do is open up that master concept plan that William Pereira put together for us for the remaining 9,000 acres of Moulton Ranch. He put together a whole plan about what it would look like if we developed it, but that wasn't anybody's ultimate interest. The family left Orange County because they wanted to keep farming and ranching, and none of them wanted to be developers. And so ranches were born as the ranch sold off, and I grew up on one of those ranches about an hour north of Sacramento. But Lompoc, Sacramento, Merced, Hollister, Julian, all places in California where, and a couple places in Oregon where we still ship cattle today, is what was born from the sale of Moulton Ranch. Before we get into the museum itself, are there any questions? Okay. I've bored them into silence. All right, here we go. So Moulton Museum opened a year and a half ago. Our current exhibition is 1874 into the West. You saw that video that is broken into 4 parts throughout the museum. Nellie's gallery. Nellie Gail was also an amazing painter. And you see some of her work in that bottom right-hand picture. And we have a new exhibition coming in, artist by the name of Michael Obermeyer, who's very well known about these parts. He's an Orange County native. The exhibition is going to be called Viewpoints. And basically what he's done is he's gone around to all those areas that I just pointed out, like where the Home Depot is on El Toro Road. And he's gone back into maps and geo-tracked the ranch, and from pictures has painted what was there. So those paintings will be juxtaposed against what's there now. So you'll see a picture of a Home Depot building and then what used to be there. And he replicates those types of scenes all throughout this area. And that's going to be opening up on May 9th. And it will be up most of the summer. And what we found is that art traffic, remember I said, we're into agriculture and culture, right? And the culture brings people into the history, and the art brings people to the history. And the more that we can tell stories because of that, the better off we are. From the archival collection, which I know is of interest to all the folks on this call, the reason that we are even doing this is because we found so much meaningful material in the way of artifacts that we had to open the doors and make it open to the public. It was nothing that we ever thought that we would ever do. And one thing that you might be interested in is that picture in the upper right-hand corner. That is from a product of, I got a call from my cousin who runs a family ranch north of Santa Barbara and Lompoc. And he said, Jared, hey man, I've got this thing out of the horse tack room. It's a silver tube. I don't know what it is. There's something in it, but I don't know what it is. And I was going to put it on the burn pile unless you wanted it. And I said, stay right there. I'll hop in the car So 3.5, 4 hours later, I got there, and it was sealed tight. And I didn't know what it was, but I knew we didn't want to throw it away. And so I got it back to Orange County and pried that thing open like a tin can. And it's the original Spanish land grant patent signed by Ulysses S. Grant to Juan Avila, establishing Rancho Niguel, which was the majority of Moulton Ranch. That was the Spanish land grant. In pristine condition. You see there the wax stamp. And we now have that in Los Angeles. It was rolled in a tube for, whatever, 100 and some odd years. And I think we ended up with it because it was given to us almost as a deed would have been when you buy a property today. And so I'm sure it went from Cyrus Rawson to us. And the meets and bounds are in there. Turn left at this tree, go right to that rock, and so anyway, we have that original now in LA, getting it flattened out because it's hard to display when it's curved. And so it's a Magna Carta of South Orange County type of document. So we'll have a full exhibition about that at some point, hopefully in the near future. It's a pretty breathtaking piece. Trust me, my hands were shaking when I figured out as I rolled it out, and I didn't have gloves on or anything. And I saw Ulysses S. Grant, and I'm like, okay, this is above my pay grade. But now I know we've got items that are significant enough that we need to show this to other people. But we've got oral histories. We try to, thankfully, before my parents' generation, and I can't recommend this enough, we got everybody down and got them captured on video to tell their story, not just as it related to the ranch, but just their life. And we're so blessed because of it. And so we do that for folks that have stories to tell. We'll do oral histories. We've got furniture and home decor. We can set the Thanksgiving table just like it was back in the day. They like to have figurines, like cattle figurines, and on the center of the table. We have film. We actually have film of brandings and roundups. We still are active in having brandings and roundups. I was just up in Northern California for the annual roundup north of Sacramento, where we brand cattle and vaccinate and all of that sort of thing. The family still is active in all of that. Letters, telegrams to all the old Orange County families and beyond, buggies, ranch equipment. Our biggest problem is going to be storage. We've become a bit of a magnet. We're partnering with more and more groups. And so like Saddleback Area Historical Society is finding a home with us, and along with their artifacts as well. And we want to be that. We want to be that trusted source. So
we have a couple shipping containers.
Yeah.
yeah, there you go.
Let's talk afterwards.
Hey, we can do it. We're in the process of converting an outdoor storage area to being covered and climate controlled very soon. That tile mosaic, Wells Fargo during COVID. I don't know if you guys heard about this or noticed, but they had a leadership change at Wells Fargo, and during COVID, they used that as the opportunity to shut down all their history museums. They had history museums all over the country. This came from their LA History Museum, and it's up in our. We called them up. We had a relationship with Wells Fargo. Actually, Lewis Moulton's brother, Irving, was a banker. He was the head of the bank in Virginia City. I mean, when it was wild and woolly. Yeah, but then he ended up being the head of the Bank of California at the time, when his contemporaries were the guys who started Wells Fargo. So we kind of told that story to Wells Fargo when we heard that they were shutting down their history museums, and they said, okay. And a week later, we had a truck show up. They had 400 pieces for us, including that tile mosaic, which we really love. There's some other pieces. We got an original mining cart, some telegraph machines, etc. So this is that exhibition that I told you about, Michael Obermeyer's Viewpoints. That's just one of the paintings. That's actually Monarch Bay. That second big ridge, not the one in the far distance, but that second one, that's where the Ritz Laguna Niguel is. And you can just see what they had to do to shave off those mountains to do what was eventually been done there. But that's from a real picture. That's what it was like there. So the pioneer spirit is what we try to convey, because it's not just about our family, it's about everyone. And we think the pioneer spirit is alive in Orange County specifically. And we have some ideas about what that means. And it's what we try to get across to kids, because we don't think they hear those messages enough. The artist of that mural, which is depicting Nellie Gail's life, is standing there underneath it. His name's Luis Barajas. I know it doesn't do much for the people here in person. We're not going to hear the audio, but we're going to watch one more film. And this is The Pioneer Spirit. So, if you can. There you
go. At Moulton Museum, we honor the pioneer spirit. We believe it coursed through the veins of Lewis and Nellie Gail Moulton. Through their pioneer spirit, they taught us to dream big,
And Joe, are you
persevere
hearing this?
through challenges, work hard,
Yes.
care about people and building community, cherish the environment. Born at
So,
Irving,
it's
Kansas
telling
in
the
December
story.
1878, Nellie Gail was not quite 6 months old when one of a pair of historic tornadoes that were an inspiration of the story Wizard of Oz swept Nellie into the air across their home and blew the family's house apart. As a testament to her perseverance, Nellie landed unharmed and would later refer to the moment early in her life as her first flight. Although this was just the beginning of her life's trials, her spirit of perseverance, no matter the situation, serves as a great example for all future generations. During her teaching career near current-day Seattle, Nellie taught school in a one-room schoolhouse, teaching many different ages all at once. Soon she became part of the school's administration, and not soon after, became principal. On her own 90th birthday, Nellie gave the gift of education by paying for the full tuition of 21 students. As she explained to the Los Angeles Times, she said, "I've traveled the globe and points in between multiple times. I've lived a blessed life, but there has always been something missing. You see, I never could go to college. We couldn't afford it. After the life I've lived, you wouldn't think it would matter, but it does." She went on to say that while it was a little late for her to start college, she wanted to make sure that others could have the opportunity she never had. Not one to stay idle, Nellie used her vacation time to work, too. She would visit her sisters and their father in Southern California to work at his general store, the El Toro store, now in the city known as Lake Forest. On one of those visits while working in the store, she met local rancher Lewis F. Moulton. After a long courtship, the two married in 1908. Nellie worked with famous architect William Pereira to design the Laguna Moulton Playhouse, which still stands today in downtown Laguna Beach. Here, Nellie Gail Moulton is visiting her daughter Louise's ranch in Lompoc, California, near Santa Barbara. Smaller than the historic Moulton Ranch, the sprawling and mostly untouched 14,000-acre ranch has been preserved through a conservation easement put in place by Louise and the Moulton family with the help of California Rangeland Trust. The land will never be developed commercially. Nellie Gail Moulton was a curious, adventurous, and educated mother, teacher, businesswoman, artist, philanthropist. She once said, "As a little girl, I crossed the Midwestern plains in a covered wagon. Last year, watching a thing called television, I witnessed man's first step on the surface of the moon." I've seen so many firsts. The first telephone, the first gaslight, the first use of electricity, the first typewriter, the first bicycle, the first car, the first plane, one of the first women to work in an office, and world traveler that got the most out of her 94 years. From surviving tornadoes and the perils of crossing the country in a covered wagon, to running a powerful business in a male-dominated industry, and traveling to the farthest corners of the world, Nellie demonstrated the pioneer spirit throughout her life. Living passionately until 1972, Nellie Gail left behind a legacy of art, education, and community. She helped build and support institutions such as Laguna Playhouse, Laguna Art Museum, Laguna College of Art and Design, Chapman University, and the communities of Nellie Gail Ranch and Monarch Bay. From all of us at the Moulton Museum, thank you for visiting, and you can help keep the pioneer spirit alive by embodying these principles in your own way every day.
You gotta click out of the video.
Yeah.
Yeah, stop sharing. There you go. Share. Yeah, there you go. I think you just go to that. There we are. All right, I think we're back. And hopefully you enjoyed that. Any questions so far? Well, the way that we define pioneer spirit, and this is what we get across to kids and adults alike that come through our doors, is that it's based in dreaming big and working hard, that nothing in life comes easy. And to persevere, because you're going to get kicked in the face at one point or another, and you better get up, because nobody's going to do you any favors. You got to earn those, and care about the people and your community that surround you, and care about your environment. And those are the things that Lewis and Nellie Gail and our family believes, and I'm sure many of you do as well. But those are lessons that we try to bring forward to all the school groups and different folks that come through Moulton Museum. We want you to come and be inspired, not sad or depressed or anything like that. We also believe in art. In the museum, we wrapped those murals that you see at the bottom of the screen. There's another movie attached to that, but I won't put you through another movie. But it was actually, I mean, we just did this 5 years ago, maybe 4 years ago. And the city of Laguna Hills, which is a city of 30,000 people, has been around a long time, had never had anyone apply to put public art on a wall. So they had no idea how to do the actual process. And so we had an artist from Laguna College of Art and Design come and put together those murals that stand today on the exterior of buildings adjacent to the museum. we wanted to create selfie spots and also depict some history. And that buggy that you see in both of those murals, the one with the girls, Charlotte and Louise, on the left-hand side with their horse named Dickie, next to where it says Laguna Hills. And then the one on the opposite side with the white horses off in the distance. We have both of those buggies, the originals, in the museum. So it's fun to have those on the wall. So we like to bring the artifacts out, and so we have a lot of events, and we get in any parade that they'll let us in. Swallows Day Parade, for instance. We have for the folks that are local, you'll see our mascot is a bull, and I'll give you one guess as to what that mascot's named. Well, because
El Toro.
Hey, El Toro, you are correct. Because El Toro's name of the city got ripped away and was changed to Lake Forest, we wanted to bring El Toro back because El Toro was the town that was on all the letters that were sent in and out of Moulton Ranch. It was all El Toro. But El Toro went away and became a different name. But it's our tribute to the old days by making El Toro our mascot, and it's a big hit with young and old alike. In fact, usually the biggest applause line we get from historical groups, people that have seen the change around here, they love that El Toro is back in the fold. So we bring students and we integrate El Toro into all of that. We teach them the history. We give them a chance to paint like Nellie Gail. We have a passport for them to be able to track their journey through the museum. It's a lot of fun for everyone. In our volunteer programs, there's docent opportunities. Everything that you see there, more volunteers, the better. We want to be open more hours. So we're in no hurry. We're not going anywhere. We've been around since 1895. We don't have any plans to go anywhere anytime soon. So we believe in it growing naturally, and it will. Some of the partners that we work with, we go and try to be good citizens and support other organizations. Those are just some of the groups that we work with. That map that you can see in the bottom right-hand corner, that's a rancho map. That's what the ranchos looked like when Lewis arrived in 1874. And Rancho Niguel is that triangle piece surrounded by the gray. And the gray above Rancho Niguel was also part of Moulton Ranch. So our next exhibition at Moulton Museum is going to be called Women on the Ranch. And we expect that that's going to be rolled out in a year or so. That the picture on the left-hand side, that's Charlotte on the left and Louise on the right. Louise with the cowboy hat on, of course, and Charlotte with the cake that she was making for the branding. Nellie Gail is the picture there in the middle, and Louise is in the buggy on the right. The powerful story of the women that were involved with Moulton Ranch is one that we want to tell. After Lewis died in 1938, it was all the women running the show. And in fact, his 1/3 business partner, Jean-Pierre Daguerre, that you heard about earlier, he passed away before Lewis. And then his son died of Spanish flu. Actually, Jean-Pierre Daguerre, if you're familiar with the intersection of Cabot Road and Crown Valley Parkway, he rolled a buggy there, and that's how he passed away. So there was a moment in time where it was Nellie Gail and her 2 daughters and Jean-Pierre Daguerre's wife and their 2 daughters that ran the whole entire 22,000 acre empire. And so that's, again, a story that we want to tell. And that's going to be next, following up 1874 into the West. that's how you can get in touch with us. But I'm available for any questions.
Yes, thank you for everything. I learned a lot, and the museum has a great message.
Thank you.
I've been there a few times. I like taking Tuesdays off and swinging by.
Good.
Well, I'm a long-term resident of Laguna Niguel, 30 plus years. I had a question about your last name Mathis and the Mathis Trail in Aliso and Wood.
Yep. That's
So
us.
I often reference that trail. I'm going to say it's the steepest trail.
It is.
I learned when I talk to people, even today, newbies, e-bikes, I learned how to truly mountain bike on the Mathis trail climbing up. I think it's the steepest trail there. Is there a significance to that trail being named after your family rather, like the other ones are Rocket and Lynx?
Yeah. No, that was for my grandfather who married Charlotte Moulton, and she became Charlotte Mathis. And that's why the Moulton name kind of disappeared, is because Lewis and Nellie Gail only had 2 daughters. And so, but yeah, that's after Grandpa Mathis. And it is a challenge, to say the least, whether you're biking or walking or anything else. But it's a wonderful landmark. We're thrilled to have it, and that was certainly part of the ranch there. I mean, that was. I'll tell you a quick story. I got my dad. He left in 1968 and went up to Northern California, north of Sacramento, where I grew up. And I got him down here. He hadn't been back to South Orange County since 68. And I got him back here in 2016. He passed away in 2019. But when from street level, he couldn't recognize a thing, because all the trees and all the houses and everything, none of it was here before. It was all just rolling hills with more animals than there were people. But I got him up to top of the world, which was part of the old ranch, up above Laguna Beach. And he looked down into Aliso and Wood Canyon, and he said, now I can see it. Now I'm back at the ranch. And so we brought in artist Jeff Sewell for our first art show. And his show was called Back to the Ranch. And we just set him loose in Aliso Wood Canyon, and we geo-tracked where he painted. But anyway, all of his scenes were of Aliso Wood Canyon, including the corrals and Mathis Trail and all the rest. And but yeah, that's if you go into that Aliso Wood Canyon and you go down Mathis Trail, that's what it looked like when it was the ranch. You can walk back through time by going to Aliso Wood Canyon.
Yeah, I didn't have any awareness of that for the first 20 years I pedaled through there, including the name. And
Right.
I just thought it's kind of significant. That story is great. Did you say 2018?
16. See, he was there
16.
in 16. And when he got up to top of the world and we looked in there, that it all came back to him, and he started telling stories. He was not a storyteller. He would be appalled at how much I've talked tonight. But he started telling stories about rattlesnakes that were so big you could wrap them around the front bumper of your Jeep,
Right.
and having to chase off hippies that had come over the fence line to have love-ins or whatever. And they were always deathly scared of fire. And
right.
it happened, that they were smoking a lot of stuff back in those days. Everybody had a cigarette or something else. And so it was a big worry.
Yeah, very interesting. You just mentioned, this one's off the cuff. You mentioned the Jeeps, and I was told that the stair steps trail down into Laguna Beach was a Jeep technical trail back when you could drive through there. I don't know if you
yeah, I don't know. I hadn't heard that. But I believe it.
but stair steps trail, that one's a little different geography.
Yeah.
Very interesting. My final question is, in the time of the ranch, was indigenous people still in and around?
No, there was no real interaction. The author of the book, Ramona, which is a strong character, used the ranch as the backdrop for that story. But in terms of dealings with the tribes or anything like that, there was none really. Although Grandma Charlotte, especially after a drink at dinner, was absolutely beside herself that everyone was calling it Rancho Niguel or Laguna Niguel, because Niguel is not a Spanish word. It's a Native American word. And she would correct us all the time, and she would pronounce it, and she was very smart. She went to Pomona College at age 16, and it mattered to her. But it actually should be pronounced Niguel. And that was from the tribe that really lived inside the Aliso Creek, really, is where they had most of their space that they occupied, but not while it was Moulton Ranch.
Wow, that's great. I may change my lexicon as of tonight. I live in Laguna Niguel.
Niguel. Charlotte is smiling down right now. After one Bombay over, she would always make sure that she got that out.
Jared, we have time for one more quick question.
Thank you.
If there is somebody else. All right. Anybody? Wonderful. Thank you so very much. We really appreciate it.
Well, my pleasure, and hopefully it was informative and somewhat entertaining anyway. But thank you for the opportunity, and I hope to do something again down the road.
Oh, you're welcome. I
Thanks.
want to announce next month's speaker. It's going to be Dr. Pat O'Grady. He's going to be talking on the human occupation 18,000 years at Rimrock Rock Shelter in Oregon. This is the first time he's been going to speak to us. I hope, and that's going to be in May 9th. It's a Thursday, and I hope everybody will tune into that one. We appreciate you coming tonight, Jared. That's a lot of work putting that together. We all recognize that. Thank you for doing that.
No problem.
Everybody have a good evening. And I just came back yesterday from Austin, Texas. I got to see the total eclipse. I wanted to get that in. It was awesome. You guys have a nice evening. Take care. Good night.
Thanks.
Thanks, Jared. Thanks, Joe.
Welcome.
Thanks, everybody.
Stephen,
Go ahead.
I have a question for Jared while everybody's leaving, if he could come back.
He's getting some of the drink.
He's just getting
Okay.
some water. Yeah, I can hear
He's probably hiding.
No, I was just getting a glass of water after all that talking. What's up?
Do you ever go to the El Toro or Lake Forest rather museum, which is off of, I think, Lake Forest Drive and near Tribuco in Lake Forest or something? in that area?
Heritage Hill, yeah.
Heritage Hill, yeah.
Oh yeah, we work with them quite a bit, and we've given them things to put up, and they've given us things to
Do you
be on loan. Yeah.
Do you remember going in there and seeing an old post office kind of wall-mounted unit with handwritten names of people in the area, the original one? It's a metal, it's a metal rack.
I don't.
Well, I gave that to them, and I hope they still have it. And it was all probably, I don't remember the names on there now, but probably some of the names of your family and relatives.
I'll go. I have it on a list to get over there. The Saddleback Area Historical Society has artifacts there in a shed that we're working with them on. And also the Amigos de la Colina, they're the docent group that supports Heritage Hill. And we support both of those organizations, and the county runs it, but that docent group really is in charge.
Well, that piece came so close to being put in the trash, and I got that from Buck Bean, who was Tony's right-hand man. So
that's amazing. And I'll go check it out. Thank you for bringing it up.
It's about the size of maybe, I don't know, 15 inches wide and maybe 18 inches high or something like that, as I remember.
And it's inside the Serrano house, or it's
the last I saw it, I handed it off, and hopefully they have it there. I don't know.
Okay.
Where it
Well,
is.
if it's inside the Saddleback Historical Society shed, it's gonna end up at Moulton Museum at some point.
Oh, well, good.
So let's hope so. I'll keep my eye out for it.
Okay. And one last question, if I may.
Yeah.
On Del Obispo and San Juan Capistrano in the Armstrong Center, there used to be a whole collection of old vintage and antique farm equipment, all painted bright colors, orange and yellow and red and green and blue. Do you remember that?
I don't,
Well,
but it's been a very long time.
they took it out because of insurance liability reasons.
Oh, wow. Okay.
But I don't know where that stuff went, but if you could use some of it, it's got to be around somewhere. If you go into one of the shops in that center, you might be able to locate where that equipment is.
Yeah, I'll definitely go take a look because I want to find a Farmall wheel tractor. We got some great pictures on the ranch with the wheel tractor of various points. There was one in the presentation. And so I'd love to put that out in front of the museum at some point.
Well, talk to Ted at Plaza Art Gallery. He's in that center. He knows everything. He's been there since the beginning of that center. He knows everything where anything is.
Okay, Ted. All right.
Ted, yeah.
Okay, cool.
All right.
Thank
Good
you.
night, everybody.
Hey, Joe.
Good night.
Good night, everybody. Thanks for coming. Bye-bye.
You hinted it in your talk, I thought, about